Put your hands behind your back. You are under arrest for obstructing justice.
You know, there's a specific kind of heat you only find in the Texas borderlands, a dry, oppressive weight that settles into your lungs and makes every breath feel like you're inhaling straight from a hairdryer. But on that particular Tuesday in March, I wasn't thinking about the weather. I was thinking about the gravel digging into my kneecaps and the barrel of a service pistol pressing into the base of my skull. I was on my knees in the parking lot of a dusty Chevron station in a town called Rio Rojo. Population 32,000. A place that exists on the map but operates in a completely different century. And looming over me was Sheriff Bull Calhoun, a man with a neck thick as a tree stump and a badge that gleamed way too bright for how dirty his hands were. He was laughing, actually laughing, as he ground the heel of his boot into my shoulder blade, watching my FBI credentials skitter across the oil-stained pavement like a piece of trash. FBI, he sneered, his voice dripping with that small-town arrogance that comes from 20 years of never being told. No, honey, you watch too much TV, prove it. But before I tell you how I wiped that smirk off his face and dismantled a corruption empire that had been bleeding this town dry for 2 decades, you need to understand why I was on my knees in the first place. My name is Maya, or at least that's what my badge says. But for the last 18 months, the people of Rio Rojo knew me as Elena, a freelance photographer chasing ghost stories and desert landscapes, a harmless drifter with a beat-up sedan and a camera bag full of lenses. What they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the lenses were recording encrypted video and the button on my denim jacket was a high-fidelity microphone transmitting in real time to a secure server 300 miles away in San Antonio. Rio Rojo wasn't just a sleepy town. It was a fortress, a closed loop where the law wasn't written in books. It was dictated by Sheriff Calhoun and his puppet master, Mayor Patricia Vance. They ran everything: who got permits, who got arrested, and most importantly, who got to cross the border without being harassed. It was a protection racket disguised as law enforcement, and I had spent 1.5 years collecting the receipts that had started at 2:14 p.m. I had just finished topping off my tank, purposefully lingering, waiting for Deputy Rojas to spot me. I knew his patrol schedule better than he did. I saw his cruiser roll up, silent, just the lights flashing, reflecting off the dirty chrome of the gas pumps. Rojas was young, maybe 30. Wearing aviators he probably thought made him look tough, but just made him look like a kid playing dress up. He strolled over, hand resting on his holster, chewing gum with an open mouth. License and registration, he drawled, not even looking at me. Of course, officer, I said, keeping my hands at 10 and 2, playing the part of the nervous out-of-towner. Is there a problem? I haven't even pulled out of the station yet. Taillights out. He lied. I knew for a fact it wasn't. I checked my vehicle every morning with the paranoia of someone who knows they're being hunted. I think it's working fine, sir, I said, keeping my voice steady. I can step out and check if you like. Stay in the car, he barked, his demeanor shifting instantly from bored to hostile. He took my ID, my cover ID, and walked back to his cruiser. And then he made me wait. 40 minutes. 40 minutes of sitting in a hot car with no AC, sweat trickling down my spine, while he sat in his air-conditioned cruiser laughing on his radio. This was part of the game. It's called cooking the suspect. They want you agitated. They want you to snap so they have a reason to escalate. But I didn't snap. I just breathed. When he finally came back, he wasn't alone. 2 more cruisers had pulled up, boxing me in. And then came the main event, a black Ford F-50 with a light bar that cost more than my entire car. Driven by the man himself, Sheriff Bull Calhoun. He stepped out like he owned the asphalt, adjusting his belt, looking around at the small crowd of locals who had gathered by the convenience store entrance. They were silent, eyes downcast. That silence told me more than any informant ever could. It was the silence of people who had learned that witnessing a crime was just as dangerous as committing one. Calhoun walked up to my window, leaning in close enough that I could smell the stale tobacco and cheap cologne. Deputy Rojas says you're being difficult, Elena. Says you're challenging his authority. I'm just waiting, Sheriff, I said. I haven't done anything. Open the trunk, he ordered. No probable cause, no warrant, just a command, sir. I don't consent to a search without. I said open the damn trunk. He shouted, and before I could react, Rojas had popped the latch. They tore through it like wild dogs. They found my camera bag, my tripods, and then, buried at the bottom, my notebook. It was a decoy notebook, planted specifically for this moment, filled with just enough real information to make me look like a snooping journalist, but nothing that would blow my federal cover. Calhoun flipped through it, reading aloud for the crowd. Source confirms police are taxing the taco trucks. Deputy Rojas accepted cash bribe on Tuesday. Well. He looked at me with a terrifying grin. We got ourselves a muckraker, boys. A little reporter thinking she's gonna win a Pulitzer in my town. That's my work product, I said, reaching for my phone to record him a calculated move. I needed him to react. He snatched the phone out of my hand before I could even unlock it. You want to record this? He roared, holding the phone up for the crowd to see. Record this. He spiked it onto the concrete. Once, twice. The screen shattered into a spiderweb of glass and plastic. The crowd flinched, but nobody moved. Nobody stepped in. That's destruction of property, I said, letting my voice shake just enough to sound scared. I want your badge number. Badge number? He laughed, a deep, ugly sound. You can have my badge number when you get out of county lockup. Cuff her. On what charge? Assaulting an officer, he said, smooth as silk. I saw you lunging at Deputy Rojas. Didn't you see that, Rojas? Sure did, Sheriff, Rojas smirked. Came right at me. They hauled me out of the car, slammed my knees onto the pavement, and cuffed me. That's when the boot came down. That's when my FBI credentials fell out of my pocket. That's when he told me to prove it. They threw me into the back of Rojas's cruiser. The cage smelled like vomit and disinfectant. As we drove away, I watched my rental car getting towed, my equipment scattered. I checked the time on the dashboard clock, 14:32. Good. The timeline was set. What Calhoun didn't know was that while he smashed my burner phone, my smartwatch, a military-grade tracker with biomonitors, was logging every spike in my heart rate and every GPS coordinate, and the microphone sewn into the lining of my bra was still hot. They took me to the station, a cinder block bunker that looked more like a prison than a precinct. They processed me slow, deliberately humiliating, stripping me of my belt and shoelaces, before shoving me into an interrogation room that was 10 degrees too cold. Calhoun walked in 10 minutes later, tossing a file on the metal table. Alan Vance. He read from a sheet of paper. Drifter, activist, nuisance. You know, we looked you up. We have records of you getting arrested in Austin, Dallas, Houston. You have a habit of causing trouble. It was a fake rap sheet. They had fabricated it in 10 minutes. That's not me, I said calmly. And you know it. I want my phone call. Phones are down. He shrugged. Storm coming in. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, Sheriff, I said, leaning forward, dropping the scared reporter act entirely. You really need to look at the badge you kicked under your car. I am Special Agent Maya Cross, FBI. I am conducting a federal investigation under Title 18. You are currently committing a felony by detaining me. For a second, just a flicker. His eyes widened. Then he leaned back and laughed again. FBI. Honey, I called the FBI. I called the San Antonio field office 10 minutes ago. I asked for Agent Maya Cross. You know what they told me? He leaned in close, his face inches from mine. They said no such agent exists. My stomach dropped. That was the code. If a local sheriff calls the general line, they are supposed to deny existence for undercover operatives, but they are also supposed to trigger an extraction protocol immediately. Calhoun shouldn't be smiling. He should be terrified, unless the person he talked to at the field office tipped him off. I'm going to give you a choice, Calhoun said, his voice dropping to a whisper. You sign a confession saying you were high on meth and assaulted my deputy, and I put you on a bus out of state. Or you stay here, in a cell with some of the boys I put away, and we see how long a pretty thing like you lasts. He stood up and walked to the door. Think about it. You have until morning. They threw me in a holding cell. No water, no bed, just a concrete bench. I sat there, my mind racing. If the San Antonio office verified I didn't exist, but didn't send the cavalry, I was burned. My handler, Assistant Director Vance, was the only one who knew my cover. If he didn't trigger the extraction, he was either incompetent or complicit. I checked my watch. 19 o'clock hours. I needed to get out. I needed to find a secure line. At 7 a.m., they released me. Not because they were being nice, but because they wanted me to run. Get out of town, Rojas sneered as he handed me a plastic bag with my shoelaces. Don't let the sun set on you in Rio Rojo. I walked out into the blinding morning sun. I didn't run. I walked straight to the town hall. The town council meeting was in session. It was my only play. Public visibility. I walked into the back of the room, bruised, dirty, hair a mess. The room went silent. Mayor Patricia Vance, a woman with hair sprayed into a helmet of gold and a suit that cost more than my annual salary, was at the podium. She looked at me, and I saw recognition. Not fear, but annoyance, like I was a stain on her carpet. State your business, she said coldly. My name is Maya Cross. I announced to the room, my voice hoarse but loud. I am reporting an illegal detention and assault by Sheriff Calhoun. You're the woman arrested yesterday for assaulting an officer. The mayor cut in smoothly. This is a council meeting, not a therapy session for criminals. Sheriff, remove her. Calhoun stood up from the front row, winking at me. Happy to, Mayor. I backed out before he could touch me, scanning the faces of the locals. They were terrified. But one man, a mechanic in the back row named Mateo, looked at me with something else. Desperation. He gave a microscopic nod toward the exit. I waited for him in the alley behind the library. Mateo was shaking when he walked up. You're FBI, he whispered. For real? Yes, but I think my cover is blown. I need evidence, Mateo. Hard evidence. They'll kill me, he whimpered. They killed the last guy who talked. If you don't talk, they'll own this town forever. What do you have? He looked around, checking the rooftops. The ledger, he whispered. Calhoun keeps a ledger. Old school, paper. He doesn't trust computers. It has everything. Every bribe, every payment to the mayor, every peso sent to the Cayman Islands. He keeps it in the safe at the station. I can't get back into the station, I said. You don't have to, Mateo said. He moves it. Every Tuesday night, he takes it to the mayor's house for the weekly audit. Tonight is Tuesday. Where does she live? The big estate on the hill. But listen to me. Mateo grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. You can't trust the feds in San Antonio. Calhoun. He brags about it when he's drunk. He says he owns a suit in the city. Someone high up, who? He calls him Uncle Vance. My blood ran cold. My handler, Assistant Director Vance. The mayor's name was Patricia Vance. They weren't just partners. They were family. That's why Calhoun knew. That's why the extraction team never came. I wasn't an investigator anymore. I was a loose end. I thanked Mateo and watched him hurry away. I was alone. No backup, no gun, no badge that anyone respected. Just a hidden microphone and a burning need to burn this whole corrupt kingdom to the ground. I broke into my motel room, which had been tossed, obviously, and retrieved my emergency burner phone from the hollowed-out curtain rod, where I'd stashed it. I dialed the one person I could trust, Sarah, an investigative journalist in Austin I'd worked with on a human trafficking case years ago. Sarah, I said when she picked up, I'm in hell. I need a lifeline. Maya, I thought you were dark. What's going on? I'm going to live stream a press conference, I said, my voice trembling with adrenaline. Friday morning. I need you to set it up. I need national coverage. I'm going to name names. You'll be dead by Friday if they know you're still there, she said. Then I better make sure they don't find me. I spent the next 2 days living like a ghost. I slept in my car in the desert, eating protein bars, moving every 4 hours. But they were tracking me. I didn't know how, but they were always close. A cruiser slow rolling past the diner I was in. A black truck parked down the road from where I slept. Thursday night. I got a text on the burner phone. We know where you are. Leave tonight or you don't leave at all. They had compromised the burner. They had everything. Friday morning, 6 a.m., I was driving toward the highway, trying to make it to Austin for the press conference Sarah had set up. The road was empty, just the purple bruise of sunrise over the mesa. Then I saw them, 3 trucks, one in front, to behind. No lights, no sirens. They boxed me in on the bridge over the Rio Rojo Gorge. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching, dust clouding the air. Before I could even undo my seatbelt, the doors were ripped open. Calhoun was there. He wasn't wearing his uniform. He was in jeans and a t-shirt, holding a burlap sack. "Told you to leave, sweetheart." He grinned. They dragged me out, zip-tied my hands, and threw the sack over my head. The world went black, smelling of dust and terror. They threw me into the bed of a truck, and we drove for 20 minutes. I counted the turns, trying to map it in my head, but panic was starting to claw at my throat. The truck stopped. They hauled me out and dragged me into a building. The air changed cooler, smelling of rust and old grain. A warehouse. They pulled the hood off. We were in an abandoned grain silo. Sunlight filtered through bullet holes in the metal roof. Calhoun stood in front of me, flanked by Rojas and a man I didn't recognize. Huge, cartel-looking type. "End of the road, Maya," Calhoun said, racking the slide on his pistol. "Nobody knows you're here. Nobody cares. Tragic car accident. That's what the report will say. Tire blowout on the bridge. Body burned beyond recognition. You can't kill a federal agent," I said, backing up until I hit a rusty pillar. "The Bureau will rain hell on you." "The Bureau?" Calhoun laughed, pointing the gun at my chest. "The Bureau thinks you're unstable. Uncle Vance already filed the paperwork. You're a rogue agent having a mental breakdown. They'll be relieved you're gone." He raised the gun. His finger tightened on the trigger. "Wait," I shouted. "Just one thing. Any last words?" He sneered. "I have a biometric watch," I said, holding up my wrist. "It tracks my heart rate. If it stops, or if I trigger the panic sequence, it sends a distress signal. Not to San Antonio, to Washington." Calhoun hesitated. He looked at the cheap black rubber watch on my wrist. "You're bluffing, am I?" I tapped the face of the watch 3 times. It beeped. A high, piercing digital shriek that echoed in the silo. "That signal just went to the deputy director of the FBI. It bypasses the field office. It bypasses Vance." Calhoun's face went pale. He looked at Rojas. "Kill her, now." But then we heard it low at first, then rising like a tidal wave. Sirens. Not 1 or 2, dozens. And above that, the unmistakable thwop 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 of a helicopter rotor. I didn't call for help just now. "Sheriff," I smiled, watching the blood drain from his face. "I called for help 20 minutes ago when you boxed me in. Washington has been listening to this entire conversation." The warehouse doors exploded inward. The warehouse doors exploded inward with a concussive boom that rattled the rust off the steel beams. Flashbangs popped. Bang, 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 blinding white light searing through the dusty gloom. Smoke filled the air instantly. Calhoun screamed, firing a shot wildly into the ceiling as he scrambled backward, tripping over his own boots. "Federal agents, drop the weapon. Get on the ground, now." The voice was amplified, booming, godlike. Through the smoke, I saw them, a phalanx of tactical gear, shields, and rifles. The FBI hostage rescue team. They moved like water, fluid and unstoppable. Rojas dropped his gun instantly, putting his hands up and sobbing like a child. The cartel heavy tried to run for the back exit, but was tackled by a tackle football-sized agent, who put him into the concrete face first. But Calhoun was stubborn. He scrambled behind a rusted tractor chassis, raising his weapon again. "Drop it, Calhoun." I screamed, adrenaline surging through me so hard my vision vibrated. "It's over." He looked at me, eyes wide with the realization that his 20-year reign was ending in seconds. He looked at the tactical team closing in. Then, slowly, painfully, he let the gun clatter to the concrete floor. He raised his hands. An agent zip-tied him before he could even take a breath. Another agent, a woman with kind eyes behind a ballistic visor, rushed to me, cutting the ties on my wrists. "Agent Cross, I'm Special Agent Miller, Washington Field Office. You secure?" "I'm secure," I breathed, rubbing my raw wrists. "You cut it close. Traffic," she joked dryly, but I saw the relief in her eyes. "We've been monitoring your biofeed for an hour. Director realized Vance was compromised when you triggered the dead man switch on your email. We intercepted the kill order." They dragged Calhoun past me. The arrogance was gone. He looked small, sweaty, and pathetic. "You ruined everything," he hissed at me as they shoved him toward the exit. "You're dead, you hear me? Vance will fix this." "Vance is in handcuffs right now," Miller said to him, icy calm. "We picked him up at his country club 20 minutes ago. And his sister, the mayor? We're heading there next." But I wasn't done. "I have to get to Austin," I told Miller. "The press conference. The live stream starts in 2 hours. I need to finish this publicly." "We'll drive you," Miller said. "And we're bringing the ledger." We hit the road in a convoy of black SUVs that parted traffic like the Red Sea. I used the time to clean up in the back seat, wiping the grease and blood off my face with wet wipes, trying to make myself look less like a kidnapped victim and more like a federal agent. We arrived at the Austin Press Club at 9:58 a.m. The room was packed. Sarah had done her job. There were cameras from CNN, Fox, MSNBC, local affiliates, and streamers. The buzz in the room was electric. They knew something big was happening, but they didn't know the half of it. I walked onto the stage at 10 a.m. sharp. The hush was instantaneous. I must have looked like a wreck-bruised cheek, dirt on my jeans, hair wild, but I stood tall. "My name is Special Agent Maya Cross," I said into the microphone, my voice steady for the first time in days. "Badge number 8940. For 18 months, I have been undercover in Rio Rojo, investigating a criminal enterprise operating under the guise of law enforcement." The cameras flashed, a strobe light of attention. "This morning," I continued, "I was kidnapped by Sheriff Wade Calhoun in an attempt to silence me. That attempt failed." I gestured to the side of the stage. Agent Miller walked out carrying an evidence bag containing the ledger, the battered, leather-bound book Mateo had told me about. We had recovered it from Calhoun's truck at the warehouse. "This book," I said, pointing to it, "contains the names of 47 victims. Immigrants extorted for their life savings. Business owners forced to pay protection money. It details for $2 million laundered through shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Accounts controlled by Mayor Patricia Vance and her brother, former Assistant Director Thomas Vance." A gasp rippled through the room. The live stream comments on the monitor in front of me were flying by so fast they were a blur. "Holy **, is this real?" "Hero," I looked directly into the camera lens. "To the people of Rio Rojo who are watching this, the fear ends today. Sheriff Calhoun is in custody. Mayor Vance is in custody. The system they built to oppress you has been dismantled. You are free to speak." We played the audio recordings next. The sound of Calhoun threatening me. The sound of the mayor discussing the money laundering. It was damning. It was undeniable. By the time I stepped off that stage, the story was breaking news across the world. The fallout was swift and brutal for them. Within a week, the Department of Justice had seized every asset Calhoun and the Vances owned. The ranch, the luxury cars, the offshore accounts all frozen. A federal judge established an $8.7 million compensation fund for the victims. It wasn't enough to pay for the years of terror, but it was a start. 3 months later, I drove back to Rio Rojo. The town felt different. The air felt lighter. I pulled up to the diner where I used to eat alone, watching my back. The re-elect Sheriff Calhoun sign that had loomed over Main Street for 2 decades was gone, replaced by a simple banner, "Town Hall Meeting, Tuesday. All welcome." I walked into the diner. It was bustling. People were talking loud, laughing. They weren't whispering anymore. Maria, the waitress who had served me coffee every morning for a year without ever making eye contact, looked up. She froze. Then, tears welled in her eyes. She dropped her notepad and ran around the counter, pulling me into a hug that knocked the wind out of me. "You came back," she sobbed. "We thought we'd never see you again." "I had to see it," I said, hugging her back. "I had to see if it was real." "Look," she said, pulling back and pointing to the wall. There, framed above the register, was a screenshot from the press conference. Me, at the podium, battered and bruised. Underneath it, someone had written in marker, "La verdad nos hizo libres, the truth set us free." Jorge got his money back, Maria told me, wiping her eyes. He bought a new truck for his landscaping business. And Mateo is running for sheriff. I laughed. "Mateo, the mechanic?" He says we need someone who knows how to fix things. She smiled. I sat in a booth, my old booth, and ordered a coffee. I watched the town outside the window. I saw a patrol car drive by. It wasn't hunting. It was just patrolling. The driver waved at a pedestrian. It wasn't a perfect ending. Justice is messy. The trial was going to be long. Calhoun was trying to cut a plea deal, turning on Vance to save his own skin. But he would die in prison. The feds would make sure of that. I thought about the fear I felt in that warehouse, the cold metal of the gun against my chest. I thought about the moment I realized my boss had betrayed me. It leaves a scar, knowing that the system you serve can be rotten from the inside. But then I looked at Maria, pouring coffee for a table of tourists who had no idea this place used to be a war zone. I looked at Mateo's campaign flyer taped to the window. Corruption relies on silence. It relies on the belief that one person can't make a difference, that the powers that be are too big to topple. Calhoun thought he was a god because nobody ever told him he was just a man. I took a sip of coffee. It tasted better than it ever had before. I'm heading to Washington next week. The director offered me a new task force. Public corruption. Border regions. They want me to do it again. Hunt down the Calhouns and the Vances of the world. I told them yes, because there are 100 other Rio Royos out there. 100 other towns held hostage by little tyrants with badges and gavels. And someone has to go turn on the lights. So, here's my question to you watching this. We all see things in our own communities that don't look right. Maybe it's not a corrupt sheriff. Maybe it's something smaller. But we stay quiet because it's safer. Because we think it's not our business. If you had the chance to speak up, knowing it might cost you everything, your job, your safety, your peace of mind, would you do it? Or is the price of truth too high? Let me know in the comments. And if you've ever fought back against the system and won, I want to hear your story. Share this video. Let's make sure the next tyrant knows that we are watching. I'm Maya Cross. Stay safe, stay loud, and never let them see you blink.